We're in a small, tight-knit community, torn apart by horrific violence.
Heavy-duty machine gun. Against, they shoot people with those.
The inhabitants of Kfar Aza have either fled, been taken hostage or murdered. Festive decorations put up shortly before the attack still hang from homes. The Israeli military have brought us here as they finish sweeping the area. Amongst the debris, unexploded grenades. Walking through here, seeing what's left of people's homes, people's lives, you get a sense of just how terrifying it must have been for the residents when the gunmen launched their assault. Some of the bodies of the militants are still here. There's a strong smell of death in the air. Israel has been left traumatized by just how deadly this rampage was.
Down, stay together, guys.
And there's still the threat from rockets fired from Gaza. The focus now, the awful task of retrieving and identifying bodies. This salvage team has just arrived here from the site of the massacre at a music festival.
Some of them try to hide, and we see them in a position like defending position. And this is pretty much, you asked me about what I saw, the smell there, the thinking about what they had in their few seconds of life. And last one, about the freight, about the hard that they went through.
Teachers Shlomi and Shah are just two of the hundreds upon hundreds of victims murdered in their homes. They believed in peace between the communities and sent their daughter Shir to a school with Jewish, Muslim and Christian children. She spent hours terrified and alone in a safe room whilst the attack took place.
I couldn't turn on the lights. Will they hear me? Will they know I'm home?
As we talk, warning sirens blare.
As long as you're in Israel, you're a threat.
There have been barrages of rockets throughout the day. We're in a hospital where Shir's teenage brother is undergoing surgery. He was with her parents when they died.
We talked to our brother and we asked him what happened. I told him, I need to know. He said that as soon as the red alerts started, they ran into the safe room and they heard at some point glass breaking, and then they heard people walking in their house, and they heard them outside of the safe room speaking in Arabic. And my dad said they put a mattress in front of the door, and my mom told my brother to hide between the bed and the wall. And then there was a big explosion, and my brother said he heard my dad saying that he lost his arm. And they started shooting everywhere, and my mom died on him. She died protecting him, and she told him everything will be all right. And he was alone for so many hours, and he was wounded, and nobody could help him.
This country is still trying to process what's happened. No one thought anything like it was possible under the watch of Israel's powerful military and intelligence services. What happened here is obviously so horrific, but speaking to relatives of the victims, there's also a lot of anger at how long it took Israeli forces to respond, why what more wasn't done to prevent the militants getting here in the first place.
I feel angry. Everybody in the army feels angry from top down, and we know that we're going to do the deepest analysis of how this happens. This never can happen again.
What went wrong?
You know, I think it's going to take us weeks and months to really figure that out, and we're going to do it because these are our people.
Heavy artillery now faces off towards the Gaza Strip. Israel is vowing to eliminate the threat from Hamas and the country seems united behind that. But the coming days are likely to see more lives lost. Well, today there have been further clashes between, or sporadic clashes at least, between Hamas militants and Israeli soldiers. There's also been a barrage of rocket fire coming out from the Gaza Strip, particularly targeting the southern city of Ashkelon. These rockets, though, compared to the kind of massacres that we've seen over the weekend, well, they don't cause anywhere near that level of death and destruction. Where possible, I've been trying to speak to some of the Israelis here about whether they think there is a military solution to this conflict. History would suggest there isn't, but at the moment, amongst both sides, there seems there's little appetite for talk of peace.
Thank you, Sikandar, for that powerful report. Sikandar Kamani there reporting along with Millicent Teasdale, Al Thompson and Ariel Tagar. Now, we cannot get inside the Gaza Strip. Of course, as you know, the Gaza Strip, which has been sealed off by the Israeli military and its residents, around 2.3 million Palestinians, are feeling the full force of their neighbours' wrath. We cannot get inside, but we have been able to get our colleague, filmmaker Youssef Hamash, who lives in the Gaza Strip, to compile this eyewitness report. And once again, a warning. It is distressing from the very start.
You can't hear yourself think. It's not just the noise of the sirens and the strikes. The sound of the chaos in between is just relentless. Pure panic everywhere you look. This little boy was pulled out alive, his face blackened. His rescuer rushes to his mother. But before she can embrace her boy, she passes out in a shock. Any car becomes an ambulance. This woman is driven off before the boot can be shut. We've been told to get out, but where do we go? And how do we get there? There are more than 2 million people living here. Almost half are children. Families are rushing, trying to make plans. Every second matters. Gaza is under a complete siege. No water, no food, no electricity, and no escape. It's too hard. Some almost give up. But you can't stand still for long.
Please, my family, they're just kids.
We are not strangers to war, but how it feels this time. It's hard to find the words. It feels like the world is collapsing. Many are confirmed dead, even more are missing. This woman cannot find her son.
I haven't heard from him since Saturday. I haven't heard anything from him, nothing.
Here is the family. They're gathering all together, also in a place far away from the window. I was trying to explain things, but I think you can hear them now. I'm walking right now close to my home, close to my building, but I swear I couldn't recognize the streets. I'm also afraid walking because any minute anything may explode.
This afternoon I met Plestia on the street close to where her home once was.
Now it's not even safe to walk. Like as you can see here, this building caught a fire as well, other than the bombardments that happened. So it's not safe, nothing is safe, literally.
Now nothing is recognizable.
This is an ambulance.
She's afraid of what's happening now and what might happen next.
Yusuf Hamash with that report. Well, the Gazan Health Ministry says that 830 Palestinians have already been killed in the bombardment, while the UN Human Rights Chief said that Israeli strikes had hit residential buildings and schools. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Porrick O'Brien, has been examining the situation inside Gaza, and his report too contains distressing images from the very outset.
If you live in Gaza, the only thing worse than experiencing last night's bombardment, the prospect of worse to come. Retribution in the ruins of localities like Ramal and Khan Yunis. The names of neighborhoods that will map out Israel's reaction to Saturday's attack. This is the geography of retaliation, an earthquake of airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, likely to continue for days. The Israelis say they are warning people to evacuate buildings in advance of strikes, a courtesy not afforded those murdered on Saturday. Abu Mohammed Hassouna says a neighbour, who was not at home at the time, received a warning call from the Israeli Defense Forces and started running towards the building, with the IDF caller still on the line. According to Abu Mohammed, the caller said they had 5 to 10 minutes.
People started running. I was sheltering in an alley with my brother and his children. Suddenly, we heard the explosion. My brother's children were standing in a doorway. They became martyrs.
The 2 children were killed in the blast last night, according to their uncle. In a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces said they'd targeted this particular neighborhood, Ramal, because it, quote, serves as a hub for the Hamas terrorist group, from which many of the attacks against Israel were launched, they said. Together with the West Bank, Gaza makes up the Palestinian territories. It takes about an hour to drive from top to bottom. It's only 25 miles long. But it's home to 2.3 million people. And evacuating high-rise buildings, for example, getting people out into the cramped warren of streets below, means that even with warnings, hundreds of civilians will die in the days to come. Nearly all the largest neighbourhoods have been hit. Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south, Beth Hanan and the Shati and Jabalia refugee camps. But it's the Ramal district in Gaza City itself, which is in the process of being wiped off the map. These women epitomise the deadly bind that many Gazans are now in. Samu Abu Latifa's family fled a different neighbourhood to Khan Yunis in the south, as advised. But it was also bombed overnight. Her brother and 2 family members were killed. We were told to come here, she says, but all we found was death. If we stay in our homes, we die, she says. If we go out onto the street, we die. The world is closing in on these women, with no realistic prospect of escape. After Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007, Israel imposed a blockade. Residents aren't allowed leave without the proper permits. Right now, no one is getting in or out of Gaza via the 2 crossings into Israel. Then there's the Rafah crossing into Egypt. This was Rafah today. It was also attacked. The Egyptians blamed Israel. The upshot, that crossing is now also shut. In other words, Gazan civilians have no way out. And into this pressure cooker, the prospect of a possible ground offensive, Israeli troops gathering on the border. The Gaza Strip is often described as an open-air prison. Now even its walls are closing in.
Well, earlier I spoke to British Palestinian Dr. Ghassan Abu Sita, who's currently working at the Shifa hospital in Gaza. I asked him what he and his colleagues were up against.
Grounds of Shifa Hospital have turned into